Welcome to the Faith and Fear podcast. Our goal is to help illuminate some of the more obscure aspects of the esoteric, to shed light on places that for centuries have been purposely kept in the dark. Join us as we discuss our experiences in this arena and work through the greater mysteries of life together. And we're on.
We are alive and we are here. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Ryan, to this weird room that we're now in together. And thank you for being brave with me as we are endeavoring to record our conversations in a serious way for the first time.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Sure. Yeah, it's exciting.
So, I would like to get to know all y'all better. I'd like to get to know what we're doing here better. And to that end, I have suggested 3 questions for all of us to answer. These 3 questions go something like, what are the parts we are bringing to the table? What archetypal, mythic elements are we working with here? Secondly, to give context to this greater work we want to give texture to, what is the goal? What are the goals even of these greater works, of these different parts and roles we are playing? And thirdly, what are we needing in this process, in this experience, this embodying, for the sake of a greater expression and perhaps, hopefully, a greater experience? Please, Greg, introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Greg. So I wrote out a few answers to these questions. So if I get too wordy here, go ahead and stop me. But as far as your first question, basically, what is your work? I went all the way back to the beginning and said, from an early age, I had a strong passion for seeing clearly and understanding the deeper meanings behind the experience of life. I've always operated with a sort of inverted lens of the world, where I gravitated to the aspects of life that are difficult to notice. As I began finding the wisdom I was looking for, this passion became a desire to find simple and translatable ways of sharing it with others. My work has involved exploring human potential through my own, particularly that of the human mind. For me, our ability to not only change our minds, but change our state of mind is our most powerful ability in terms of changing our experiences and circumstances. Of course, we do this very naturally all the time for countless reasons, but how we do this is a vast subject that has been only barely tapped into by mainstream inquiry. My work could be described as the search and engagement with the unknown territories of the mind and its spiritual natures. In this work, I've experienced innumerable encounters with intangible aspects of life, such as our mental relationship with creation, nature, God, gods, and deities, as well as the seemingly anomalous phenomena of synchronicities and archetypal spiritual encounters. This has influenced my interest in esoteric philosophy, alchemy, spiritual psychology, along with the more spiritual elements of martial arts, particularly swordsmanship, Zen, Kung Fu, and the art of war. As for what my goal is, I hope to serve others with this passion. My goal is to offer any insight I can into the more hidden or hard to see forces behind everyday experience, particularly instances of fear, chaos, or confusion. I hope to contribute to bringing faith, order, and understanding where those negativities occur. Starting from there, I'm looking forward to seeing what that leads to as far as further ventures that may come out of the conversation.
Hmm.
As for what I need, honestly, for now, I feel that having the conversations we intend to have on this podcast is what would be most helpful to me. I'm very interested and excited to work together to build a coherent and productive language around the mysterious fields of thought that we plan to explore. If I come up with anything else I might need help with, I'll let you guys know. But it's a blessing and an honor to start out on this adventure with you both.
Awesome.
And with that, I'll hand it over to Ryan.
Thank you,
All
Greg.
right. My name is Ryan. For the last 21 years or so, I've been involved in paranormal research and investigation. I've led and been a part of multiple different research teams. Recently pursued or accomplished gaining my PhD in parapsychology. I'm a certified paranormal investigator. I've been passionate about the subject of the paranormal and kind of esoteric experiences for all of my life. But for the last 20 or 21 years, it's been, kind of a primary focus. As far as goals, while I was doing the investigative work, the goal was always to help people understand and feel comfortable in their homes, understand what they're experiencing and feel comfortable in their homes. So if I was able to explain or document the activity that they were experiencing, I could talk them through it so that they would either understand better or, not be afraid anymore. That's the big thing. And a lot of times you can chalk it up to bad wiring, but sometimes there's a legitimate experience that they're having, and it can be very scary for people. So that's been a big passion of mine, is because I've had many experiences of my own, especially as a child, and I didn't really have a place to go or someone to talk to about it. So being a resource for people who are experiencing things like that has been very fulfilling for me. As far as what I need, um, I feel really honored to be in on this call with you both. I feel kind of like a spiritual dwarf compared to the esoteric wisdom in the room. So uh so I'm looking forward to learning from you guys, and hopefully a developing audience if we have any kind of feedback, just to explore the greater mysteries that are out there. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to our future.
Right on.
And I think the name we haven't said tonight is Michael. Will be our third chair. And let's take it over, Mike.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for sharing your good work.
Absolutely.
Would like to also call out or tease out, if you will, something I'm hearing. I heard it the first time you shared with me your work. This role of service, and I was really moved. I hadn't considered that angle to the paranormal investigation and realm, just because it's so sensationalized anymore.
Absolutely, yeah.
That you're not seeing people like doing social work with ghosts, and make sure the grandmas can sleep okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, really touched by that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with people who are kind of at their wits' end, ready to sell their house, even though they really can't afford to change locations, and just being able to help them, you know, even mentally and financially, um,
Mhm.
stay where they are because they now understand, oh, the experiences they're having aren't dangerous, or a lot of people default to it, it's unknown, it's dark or demonic or scary, but more often than not it's either benign or like I said, faulty wiring.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
I really appreciate that that consideration, the exercise with these people in that realm. It reminds me also of how the common thread I'm hearing also shared with Greg, and all of these very grand esoteric realms that you're coming from, Greg. There is this thread of service,
Mhm. For sure.
and it reminds me how the the very word family has a etymological root in servant, and
Mm.
it's worth noting, I think, the strong family like connection y'all have, that there is a great past and a great story to be told there. I just wanted to perhaps call out that beautiful connection there for full of later follow through.
Yeah.
Sure.
I see you too, and I'm very interested in what comes out of this. Thank you. As far as
Well,
myself, my work, to try to be concise, could be summarized in four archetypes. There is the archetype of the addict. Since I was 5 years old, pretty much as far as I can remember, I've been addicted to something. First, it was video games, then it was cereal, then it was cannabis, and then it was overeating again, and then it was a combination of everything. For so much of my life, I have been taking in poison of many different kinds, consuming poison. And this makes space for the second archetype of the wounded healer. So much poison taken in, so many injuries, so much damage taken. Where's the wisdom in those wounds? Where's the womb for some greater being to be born from that womb of the wound? Where's the skill and learning and remembering how to transmute poison, which is a thread from me with you, Greg. This wounded healer to me looks a bit like alchemist,
mm.
Mhm.
and I see you carrying that torch.
Yeah. Well, Ryan too, I suppose.
Indeed, I'm beginning to get to know you better, Ryan, and indeed, there is much you are transmuting. There are so many wounds that we are learning from and finding a greater healing through our own, it would seem, and I would hope. And to try to pursue then that healing, I am surprised to find the archetype of the exorcist. Um, it has a bit of a cult following and is not entirely uh, universally popular, but people did go to the theaters in masses when they re-screened the original Exorcist. There's an interesting fascination there. And as far as I'm able to make sense of transmuting the poison and telling the demons to be gone, uh, dispelling the darkness, instead of the very old story that I have watched for my all of my life of overcoming an enemy and dispatching him, there seems to be more this synthesis that's asking for being asked for, this dovetailing in all the wounded child integration stuff, that these shadows, these boogeymen, are looking to be held and received, remembered with us. The Dark Crystal showed it pretty good if anyone saw that original.
Yeah.
I'll try to
for
keep
sure.
light on old references. And so I see a thread connected with you here, Ryan, of the this paranormal investigation and trying to get to the bottom of the haunting and dispelling the experience of being haunted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is happening in a lot of different realms. And that, I guess, is my goal. I'm seeing so many different kinds of people being haunted by so many different kinds of things, and yet they all seem very, very similar. And I think we're getting closer in all of our walks and all of our works. There is a truth getting clarified. I'm very curious to get closer to that, continue to clarify it. And it might be a need. I'm getting kind of itchy for it. You know?
For sure.
Someone's got to give.
Yeah, I guess that's what I like about the trio we have here is we're all coming from different angles, but all have the same goals and all kind of working in the same arena of mystery that people are generally dealing with. And yeah, it's just interesting to have all these different perspectives together to try to tackle these issues and put them in easy to digest terms, especially being able to give all these different examples from our different types of experiences among us.
Indeed. And it's going to be an interesting challenge to try to keep it simple, because it's very easy. There's so many weeds in this story. It's very easy to get lost in the weeds. And to that end, I also want to honor you, Ryan, as just as giant in this room. Like I saw that picture you sent. I had no imagination of you being well-built, strong man. I was like, oh shit.
Ryan's a beast.
So yeah, you've got presence in this world. You are a father in this world. And yeah. I think there's a groundedness I sense in you that I'm very grateful to have here, because I get very heady very quickly and lost in word soup, lost in the weeds. I'm looking forward to bringing some groundedness and some straightforwardness. I'm hoping. Help me out.
Yeah, same here.
Right on. Thank you, guys.
You are welcome.
Well, as far as what we're going to talk about first, I don't know. I've been trying to narrow it down a lot. I feel like it's going to be the purpose of this first episode to try to come up with homework for what the next episode is going to be about, like what subject we want to focus on. And thinking about it over the last couple of weeks, it seems, like you said, really hard to narrow it down to a simple term or a phrase. So I guess that's probably going to be our first goal here, is trying to figure out how to summarize all that we're planning on getting into. We know what our goals and hopes are, but I guess now it's time to figure out how we're going to get to work.
That's a good.
I'd say that's probably the overarching goal would be to kind of dive deeper into the more occult or esoteric mysteries of life and try to break that down into more bite-sized layman's terms, because there is a lot online and a lot of it is gobbledygook, and
Right.
There are nuggets of wisdom hidden, but they're usually hidden under mountains of allegory and purposely obscure. So if we can kind of use our experience and knowledge to help further the next generation that's coming up and looking up this stuff. I think that would be great.
Yeah, for
Agreed.
sure. Getting
Mhm.
some sort of map built for people who are struggling through I guess all the stuff that we've struggled with in our lives and learned stuff from. But yeah, trying to bring it all back down to center, down to earth,
Yep.
where it actually all applies instead of all this allegory and confusing mythology.
Mhm.
But like you said, I guess it's only confusing because it's kind of made to be that way.
Yeah.
And there
But
is so much, as you point out, Ryan. There's so much to try to make sense of, and so much is happening all the time to make sense of as well.
Right.
So to respond to your desire here, Greg, of kind of figuring out what is our approach here to these things,
mhm,
I think uh, to follow our introduction and to better illuminate our angles here and what we're bringing to the table to form this beautiful triangle. The
mhm,
different kinds of thinking seem to be in order because I do tend to go into a psychological lens and thinking about that process and how the emotions are connected to some sensation or some thought and trying to map all that out. So let's, how about we try to explain that in the next, for the next amount of time that it takes to explain that,
mhm,
to get closer to that answer.
mhm. Yeah, it's hard to know where to begin because I mean, I guess we haven't even mentioned what the podcast is called yet.
You
But
said that in post in the future.
Yeah.
oh,
Future Greg will put that in.
oh right, forgot about Future Greg.
That's a
Thanks,
problem
Future
with
Greg.
Future Greg.
Always forget about Future Greg. But faith
That's
and
good. That
fear.
means you're in the present.
But yeah, faith and fear. We had a bunch of ideas of what to call the podcast, and some of it was quirky stuff to be funny, and some of it was a little too serious. And I feel like faith and fear was right in the middle of those two categories. And it also happens to be like I've known both of you, Michael for about 15 years, Ryan over 20 years. And since we met, since I met both of you, it seemed like a big part of the conversation that always came up was the categorization of things into either faith or fear. So I guess it would be good to try to expand on those terms a little bit, and maybe that'll help get us to a point where we know where we're going to start here. But as far as I'm concerned, faith is the more positive actions, thoughts, feelings. So faith would be like courage and strength, or self-awareness, self-mastery, and fear is of course the opposite. Should be like sadness, hatred, anger, um, all those types of things. And these are, of course, just simple general terms to describe them. But as we go along here, we'll see how faith and fear can be used to categorize a lot of things. The difference between faith and fear.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, as far as how those would apply, I guess when we're talking about service, we are trying to bring basically faith to the fears of others in the ways that we've learned to do so, throughout our experiences over the last decade or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's where we're trying to head. But we also wanted to talk about the difference between spiritual thought and material thought, which is
Yeah.
it's another thing that's kind of easy to get convoluted. But guess basically, material thoughts, all the things that, all the thoughts and feelings that apply to actual experience, like physical, very plain to see, lizard brain kind of stuff in life. And spiritual would be the more subtle things that you kind of know it's there, but you can't define it. You can't really pinpoint it. All you can do is write your best poetry about it. And yeah, it's the more elusive stuff, but both those categories, material and spiritual, could be broken down into, faith and fear kind of actions. So yeah, as we explore like spiritual thought, it can be broken down into thoughts, feelings, and everything about faith and fear. So like you can have a good, fulfilling, holistic experience or take that kind of action, or you can have a fearful or a confusing or manipulative or deceitful kind of response to something as well, or have that happen to you. And I guess why we're distinguishing between material and spiritual thought is it's easy for pretty much anyone to see what the good and bad, basically, of the material experience are. I think people get the general idea. When it comes to spiritual thought, those are more the things that we tend to not notice. They're in our subconscious. They're a part of our experience that we could be conscious of, but we don't have to be. So most of the time we're not. But
Right.
spiritual forces are constantly affecting everything, because when you get down to it, even material things are spiritual in nature. So yeah, I guess what we're trying to focus on is less what the disputes about reality are on the material plane, and try to focus more on the hidden stuff that gets past us all the time, but still affects our lives. And we can either let it control us or learn how to master it and harmonize with it, move on, just like we're floating, kind of thing. But anyway, I don't want to talk too much longer here. Hand it over.
Thank you, Greg, for explaining your understanding of these two, shall we call them elements, faith and fear? Sorry,
Sure.
of spiritual thinking and material thinking, these two modes, frequencies. And I appreciate the contextualization that you give to spiritual thought, and to the spiritual fabric, how it's just as material, there is attraction there. For the sake of the story and painting a picture here of faith and fear in a perhaps material, through a material lens and a spiritual lens, I'm wanting to speak as matter of factly as we can about how, for starters, faith and fear are first thought of in a material way. What is the material experience, if you will, of faith and fear? And how does that compare to a spiritual approach to faith and fear? Does that make sense?
It does. That's a good question. Oh, well. Well, Yeah, I guess to me, the material is just kind of the more well-known morals that we have. Like, don't hurt people, treat people like you treat yourself, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's more of our actions and whether or not we're faithful or afraid while we're taking action or thinking about things. I don't know, it could be negligence, basically. Like you don't care enough to um, safely drive your vehicle down the road and you end up damaging something or hurting somebody. Just bad decisions like that. Those would all come from fear and the basic forms of like anger and sadness and how those can affect our minds. I guess, yeah, I guess the reason we're even making the distinction is just to separate what might be common knowledge about uh, personal morality and generosity to others and yeah, just service and our sense of being in the world that
Mm.
we're cognitively aware of. And it's easy to see the elements of our lives that are easy to see, the faith and fear
Hmm.
that's right in front of us.
Interesting. Could you describe a material? Could you? Is there a way you could describe faith through a material lens?
Sure. Well, it's like personal confidence. It's a trust in the world around you when you can face the world, whatever you're dealing with this self-awareness and balance and patience and peace.
Hmm.
And yeah, on the material level, if you do that, you're affecting the spiritual level as well in that same
Hmm.
way.
So
But
then, how does faith and fear look differently through the spiritual lens?
well, if you have this inner strength, this self-confidence, this self-mastery, it affects your presence. And your presence, if you can tune that to harmonize with the world around you, the events in your life are going to happen differently for you. The circumstances might not change, but how you see it is different, which changes it completely for you. But because you see it that way, because you're acting in a realm of faith, it adds like uh, I don't want to say good karma or anything. It just you're not taking as much damage from the forces that are being applied to you. In fact, you can take those forces and transmute them into something that helps you and those around you.
Mhm.
That's the faith side. But the fear side, if you're acting out of fear, that it could come from traumas, it could come from just some decision you made a long time ago and forgot about how you're going to behave. It could be all kinds of things about how you set up your inner self to deal with everything. But if you're acting out of fear, you're not only going to create confusion and anger and sadness and loneliness and all these things in your own self, but you're also going to present that to the world around you and start planting those seeds everywhere you go.
Hmm. Curious, if I may pause you here,
Sure.
as you're describing the expression of being in this fear, it sounds rather negative and
Hmm.
could be called uh, bad.
Sure.
And so this is something I'm very curious about personally in my walk, in my life, is I'm trying to integrate experiences that are telling me that fear is necessary.
Sure. Yeah. Well,
It's
fear
bad,
has its,
it's necessary.
yeah, and I guess that's a good point to bring up because that's why we don't use the terms good or bad really in our conversations, and why I like the terms faith and fear more because they're not really good or bad, either of them. They both have their own applications that could be creative or detrimental. But yeah, fear definitely has um, its uses. It can be a fear of something that's going to harm you or harm somebody else that you care about. And that's a good rational fear to have. And fear can fuel you to find that faith you need to deal with it.
Yeah, 'cause this is making me think of Ryan's experience with clientele that are worried about something in their house, thinking it might be supernatural when it was something mundane, but still a fear was warranted,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Like
I
that
think
that
where
bad watering could be very dangerous. I'm curious what you've experienced there, Ryan.
I think where it becomes overtly negative is when it is allowed to control your life,
Mhm.
right? So fear is a natural response, something that we deal with day to day, but and something we're force fed. If you watch any kind of media, any kind of news, you know, we're they want they want
Mhm.
us to be afraid, right? Because if you're afraid, then you're controllable. So yeah, I think the big key is just to understanding and acknowledging fear, but not letting it take over or overwhelm you or your life.
Indeed, that would be a serious haunting and possession. And yet, I'm curious in your scenarios that you've directly experienced with customers or clients, people who have hired
Mhm.
you for paranormal investigation, certainly if they were so afraid and they could be vulnerable to fall prey to some grifter,
Mhm.
yeah, who could really put on a show and milk them.
Right. Yeah, and I think I told you before in my investigative work, I never taken a penny from anybody. I I I I really think that that's bad form, especially when people are, sometimes at their most vulnerable. That you're saying, yeah, I can come help you, but it's going to be $500 or whatever it is. Um,
And because fear,
because
they're going to be that much more likely. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. And I've definitely encountered people or teams that charge sometimes a lot of money, um, to come to your house and say, oh yeah, there's some unshielded wiring in your basement, and you just might be extra sensitive to, electromagnetic frequencies, and it's kind of raising the hairs on the back of your neck. It's not a ghost, it's just you gotta hire an electrician. Pay me. I think that's horrible. So, when we were able to identify, uh, you know, the quote unquote haunting as something mundane, that was always kind of well received. And in the cases that there was something legitimate, usually, not always, but usually it wasn't something overtly negative. It was just something that they didn't understand,
Mhm.
the client. So if we were able to say, do research on the history of the property, or learn more about whatever type of paranormal experience they were having, sometimes just documenting it and showing them, you know, footage or pictures or evidence that we collected, and kind of talking through, that was enough to alleviate the majority of their fear, uh, and just kind of help them coexist.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Really
Brought faith
wonderful
to
work.
fear.
Indeed. I'm curious if that was in your awareness, if you were consciously approaching the fear in these people, what that was like for you.
Um, I think I don't know if I can say that has been like the main target. I guess I guess kind of for me the biggest goal was to be someone who they could talk to, that wasn't going to say you're crazy, because
Right.
it's not something you can really bring to the office or the water cooler and say, yeah, I didn't sleep well last night because my house is haunted. Most people won't say that. Um, but to help people work through this type of traumatic experience that they're having was mostly my goal, or has
Right.
been.
So this is I'm fascinated by this aspect. As you're describing it, I'm remembering this uh, fundamental need us humans have for validation, this acceptance of our experience,
Right, absolutely.
and how it's so quickly pathologized. Any kind of abnormal experience. That's what we could say.
Yeah, and I've talked to people who think that they're going crazy,
Yeah.
and just to be able to sit down and say, I believe you, let
Mhm.
me help you, I'll do my best to help you understand what's happening. Sometimes that's enough.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So this is
Um,
this is a very interesting, I think, peek at the exorcism that the wounded
right,
war healer may perform. That even the compassionate meeting of the fear and not demonizing it, not calling it bad, trying to cast it out or take advantage, what
right,
have you. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, fear is where all traumas come from. And the trauma happens because the fear wasn't faced properly. It was thrown onto us in a unstable way. And it could be anything, like you're afraid of Ferris wheels for some reason, like had a bad day when you were a kid, and for some reason you just never got over it, that kind of thing. But it was probably somebody tried to force you on it and you didn't want to
Mm.
go or something like that. So instead of you coming to terms with the fear yourself, you were forced into the situation. And in the back of your mind, you just have this trigger now. Like anytime you see a Ferris wheel, it freaks you out and you don't even remember why, that kind of thing. And the faith, I guess the fear is coming from the mystery of it. You don't know how you're going to handle it. And even if you do, when you're forced to do it, you're not really facing it. You're just terrified the whole time. So you're not focused and learning the lessons that you would be if you were passionate about facing that fear. And faith is really just trying to take that fear, whatever it was, and kind of go through a rebirth process with it. Like understand what it was that brought you that fear and kind of go through the process yourself of actually facing it. Unfortunately, you're not in the situation anymore, so you have to do this all in your mind, and it's really difficult. But
But this is the whole therapy industry. So I'm
mhm,
very, very interested in the processes you've happened upon and discovered, unearthed, and developed, because this is real richness. There's a real treasure there that is needed because it's being sold and commodified, packaged, and what have you.
mhm,
And
right.
so much of the essences are being forgotten. And I have a lot of reservations about all of the different therapies out there, which is a lot to say as someone who's going to school to become something of a therapist. But I think this is an excellent outline of a premise. And I'm very tantalized here by the many examples and scenarios that are coming up that fit into this framework, that are asking for
mhm,
greater attention. And I imagine anyone hearing this and picturing this framework with us can similarly think of scenarios that can be understood, that this understanding can be applied to.
mhm.
And so here we go into the weeds. But um, before we do, I think I would like to better integrate this crystallization of premise and perhaps get our gear better together um, before we journey again, come back into this room that's moving through time and space to uh, better understand these things.
Mm. Oh my goodness.
Um, to that end, any closing thoughts? Any inspirations for a signing off?
Well, geez. I mean, didn't bring up very much about this faith and fear stuff, um, or the spiritual versus material. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I'd like to come up with some sort of summary at least,
Mm,
for what we're trying to say here,
mhm,
because we're really talking about really deep and vague stuff. Because it's probably going to take many podcasts to even scratch the surface of most of these things. But yeah, I guess it's just our goal to try to bring some light to dark places here. And like I said, there's a lot of fear-based things going on, especially these days. We're just surrounded by it. It's unprecedented, all this technology we're dealing with. We're connected globally. We have access to everything in the palm of our hand, and don't really get that free time that we used to, where you get in your car, you don't have a cell phone. You're just out in the world by yourself, dealing with your own
mhm,
things. And we just don't get that anymore. So it's just generally hard to navigate these more subtle forces, and we are getting worse at seeing them, I guess. But yeah, I guess the hope is to try to bring some sort of understanding where there's confusion, some
mhm,
order where there's chaos,
mhm,
and really looking forward to getting into these maps we're creating, especially your map, Michael.
mhm,
Talking about that more.
mhm,
Maybe that would be a good thing to make a foundation for the next episode with.
mhm. Yeah, I'll draw that bookmark.
Right on. Yeah, maybe link all this stuff up, like the faith and fear and spiritual material.
Oh, we got
And
show notes, baby.
yeah, I guess that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Greg. Is anything uh, percolating in you, Ryan?
Um, I guess I'm just looking forward to our continued talks, and if we don't get any listeners from this, I still think the three of us are gonna get a lot out of it, and
Hmm.
maybe this will just be a little time capsule for us, but I
Mhm,
think that I definitely think that our conversations can be helpful to more people, and I think that's the goal is to bring greater understanding to things that are more mysterious or esoteric um,
mhm.
in our day-to-day lives.
Mhm.
Amen.
Well said.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
It's concurrence. Concurrence. It's it seems to me that what you are describing, this uh, this need, which I get the sense of being a greater need, as you are suggesting, this greater need for some light in the dark mystery. And as you're saying, Greg, to make some sense from the confusion, order from the chaos. And
Mhm.
this, to me, the common thread that goes through all the different issues, all the different pathologies, and all the different therapies that are trying to attend all the different symptoms. There is a great mystery that is not getting across. Something's not connecting. Something's being lost. Something's being avoided. Something's being misunderstood. Something's being rejected. And often because of fear, uh, what as y'all are describing what you're describing, I'm seeing this political theater that our nation's now watching, and how I'm hearing the same script, the same story coming out of both sides. Uh, that there is a fearful choice being made uh, because of the fear of the other. There's all this fear informing fear, And this seems to be certainly unhelpful and getting into imbalance.
Indeed.
Though I have faith that it is for a good purpose. So, and also to your end, Ryan, I'm very excited for the simple archive that this will serve for us. This is something I've been wanting for myself to keep track of all of the crazy things that are asking to be talked about and looked at. And I'm also excited about the something of a support group that it is serving, as our own lives give us material to look at and make sense of and find the purpose in, and to look at it together. That is the meaning of the meeting, wherever you find it. Like, isn't that the point of church? Isn't that the point of all the different sit-down therapies or sit-down support groups, is to make sense of this stuff?
Mhm.
And I'm looking forward to how this support may be supportive and in ways yet to be seen. That
Right
being
on.
said, thank you all for sitting at this supportive table with me.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Honored to be here.
Look forward to sitting at this table with you again.
Same. Well,
Until then, keep your head up, keep watching.
keep watching.